So far, Orion has continued to exceed expectations. On November 16th, early in the morning, after years of multiple starts and delays, Artemis 1, the first flight of the Artemis program, finally took off. This launch is historical in many ways. The SLS is currently the world's most powerful rocket by far, and this is a mission that would lead up to having crewed missions to our lunar neighbor for the first time since 1972. So when the boosters ignited and the rocket soared above an explosion of flames, entering the last frontier with nearly 9 million pounds of thrust, you can bet that thousands of people bore witness as the unmanned Orion spacecraft got launched toward the moon. The launch was not without event, and the anxiety is not yet over. In today's video, we will address the issues encountered during the launch and after the SLS entered space, so stay tuned till the end. The NASA mission team began fueling the rocket on Tuesday afternoon at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, only days after Hurricane Nicole blew across the region and sent winds up to 100 miles per hour or 87 knots into the launchpad area. The space agency claimed that by the time it became evident that the storm would eventually become a threat, it was too late to bring the rocket back inside. It would have to weather the powerful winds. NASA reports that the rocket suffered only minor damage, except for a 10-foot piece of caulking that came loose. As part of the electrical connection inspection before the launch of the rocket, technicians inspected a 33-foot tall structure called a tail service mast umbilical, which connects to the rocket's engine section. Artemis 1 mission manager Mike Serafine said the engineers still encountered some strange problems with the umbilical, but alternative devices could provide the same information. The caulking potentially coming loose during the launch is a possibility, but the Artemis team decided it was within acceptable risk boundaries, Serafine added. In what will be a historical lunar flyby, NASA's massive Space Launch System rocket and capsule lifted off at 1:48 a.m. Eastern Time. While the mission was mostly successful, there was an incident that NASA is closely studying to prepare for future Artemis program flights, including the next one with humans aboard, Artemis 2, scheduled for 2024. Meaning we can expect a lot of activities here in the coming months, building up to the D-Day. Unfortunately, at about 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time, sporadic leaks started to appear that exceeded the level NASA officials had hoped to see. What seemed like a little problem initially became a major one. When those leaks prevented the affected tanks from being fueled, NASA sent out a Red Crew, a team of people who have been specifically trained to conduct repairs while the rocket is filled with propellant. To stop the leak, the crew worked for a while until they were satisfied with the results. Leaky fuel problems is a problem NASA is all too familiar with. As the rocket is being loaded with supercooled liquid hydrogen, leaks have previously caused concerns for the Artemis 1 mission team. This was a major issue during the first two Artemis launch attempts and the decision to scrap those attempts. NASA conducted some debugging and put the rocket through a fueling test following the most recent attempt in September. Even though the test didn't go exactly as planned, NASA still regarded it as a success and immediately began organizing its subsequent launch attempt. In this game of space travel, you cannot score perfect points, so little hitches are all part of the process. According to a spokeswoman at NASA, the work was completed shortly before 11 p.m. Eastern Time, and fueling operations resumed. As it left the launch tower and began ascending through the atmosphere, an orange flame trailed behind it. Liftoff for Artemis 1. We rise together, back to the moon and beyond, NASA's video commentator Daryl Nail exclaimed in ecstasy. It was truly an exciting moment as we reenact history. The SLS boosters finished burning through their propellant after 2 minutes and then began to fall apart. The core stage rocket ran out of fuel and separated about 8 minutes after launch. All these were as designed. During the unmanned flight, the Orion capsule was connected to the service module, which is the main propulsion and power source for the spacecraft. The solar arrays of Orion were unfolded shortly after it reached speeds of over 16,000 miles per hour. So how is it all going? The manager of the Artemis 1 mission, Mike Serafine, has assured us that all is going well, and they could not have been happier with the state of the spacecraft. Things are going so well that every performance parameter for thrust and accuracy was either on target or within 0.3% of the forecast. No problems were encountered during the separation of the first, second, and solid rocket booster stages. In dropping off the Orion spacecraft with its intended payload, the rocket made a relatively minor mistake of about 3 miles, according to Serafine. But it is not all good news back on Earth. Serafine stated that the movable launch tower, which supports the Space Launch System rocket during fueling and countdown operation, sustained some damage as a result of the rocket's high thrust. Some pneumatic lines carrying gases to the vehicle were broken, and there was damage at the base of the launch stand where the boosters produced thrust. The tower's access elevator was damaged by the launch's intense shaking, and its doors were completely blown off. But there is no reason to worry too much about the damage. Serafine insisted that all issues could be resolved, despite some damage being more severe than anticipated. According to him, the launch tower will be prepared for Artemis 2. So why is this mission important, and what do we aim for? This expedition will focus on the south pole of the moon, where regions that are always under darkness may contain ice and other resources that support people during protracted moonwalks. If this water reserve is proven, this could open new possibilities for the moon as a frontier of our civilization. As NASA attempts to achieve its objective of constructing a permanent moon base, Artemis 1 is only the first of what is anticipated to be a lengthy sequence of ever more challenging missions. The Artemis 2 will travel along the same route as the Artemis 1, except it will carry astronauts. A woman and a person of color are anticipated to touch down on the lunar surface for the first time on Artemis 3, which is scheduled for later this decade. So we have a lot to look forward to with these missions. The mission's objective is mainly to collect massive amounts of data for NASA engineers and demonstrate that the Orion spacecraft and SLS rocket function as predicted before astronauts are permitted to board. The spaceship will pass the moon on December 5th before firing its engines and returning to Earth. Since the vehicle's closest approach during the November 21st flyby occurred on the far side of the moon, which was obscured by darkness at the time, the flyby on December 5th should result in even better photos. The upcoming pass will take place during the daytime, close to the Apollo's landing sites, where the vehicle's camera may capture images. Stay tuned because there is sure to be a lot of update and groundbreaking discoveries still to come from this mission. That is why you need to subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you are looking forward to more mission updates. Thanks, and see you next time.